Very pleased this morning to have one of the candidates, might be the next president of the United States, with us this morning. It's the former governor of Utah, former ambassador to China, now candidate for president, Jon Huntsman. Morning, Governor or Ambassador.
Hey, Don. John will do. I like that most of all.
Okay, good. John without an H.
All right, John.
I come from a long line of illiterates. What can I do?
John, the first question for those who are new to the Jon Huntsman name, and there still are some, you once worked for this president as his ambassador to China, and you referred to him as a remarkable leader. Obviously, you don't still believe that he is that remarkable, or you wouldn't be running to replace him. When and how did you reach the epiphany, the tipping point when he went from remarkable leader to I gotta replace him?
Well, let me tell you that I worked for President Reagan, I worked for President Bush, I worked for President Bush, and I'm one who believes, plain and simple, Don and Roma, that if you love your country, you serve your country. You put country first in all instances. It's what I teach my kids, it's what I believe, and it's what I'll take to my grave, and I would do it again. If there's some way that you can serve your country by making her better and stronger, first and foremost before party, that's where I'm going to find myself. Second of all, the president started with great fanfare, hope, and expectation. He appointed a Republican to his administration early on. I was trained to be a respectful person, write letters, thank you letters. I wrote 3 sentences in which I made that comment. I thought it was pretty remarkable that he put a Republican in his administration. He's had 2.5 years to get the economy right. The only thing that matters to the people of this country, just get the economy right, strengthen it, and create jobs. And nothing has been done. That environment that speaks to competitiveness, that environment that invites the private sector to step forward and create jobs, it's been a failure. It's like being a motorcycle rider, which I am. You're stuck in neutral. You can't kick it into first gear. So here we are. People are concerned. Their 401ks, their retirements, their most prized assets are underwater. Our nation has lost its standing financially and politically in the world, and it's time to move on. We're a blue sky optimistic people. I mean, we find solutions. We step up to challenges and always overcome. But the thing that concerns me most, I guess, Don and Roma, this go around, is people aren't just concerned about the economic situation. For the first time in my life, I find that people are genuinely scared. And that's an unnatural place for the most optimistic people in the world to be. It's unnatural, it's un-American, and we have an opportunity in 2012 to get rolling again.
John, do you think it's an appropriate time for the president to head off on a vacation to Martha's Vineyard? And
of course it's not. This is when the president not only needs to call Congress back, get busy on what? On pro-growth measures. Let's talk about growing out of the hole we find ourselves in. Everybody knows we've got to cut, we've got to deal with the deficit, we've got to deal with debt. We have plans on the table already. Just embrace one of them, for heaven's sake. But just as importantly, we've got to grow. Like we did as governor of the state of Utah. We became the #1 job producer in the entire United States. Why? Because we created an environment that was friendly to growth and entrepreneurship and the attraction of capital. For the president and Congress, get out from behind the speaker podium. Get out from behind the teleprompter. Speak to us from your heart and soul. Tell us what you want to do. Tell us what the future of this country holds. Get going. But the thing that needs to happen more than anything is we've got to speak in terms of growing our way out. That's the only way we're going to pay the bills going forward. That's the only way we're going to maintain the quality of life that we've always come to appreciate in this country.
John, don't you think they're planning on that bus tour every minute while they're on that bus, planning jobs, planning a plan for jobs while they're on that bus tour?
But come on, let's face the facts. Bus tours are great, and I particularly like it when a good rock band is on tour. But to have the president or anybody else, when the most important thing they could be doing is to stand up and say, okay, the regulations of this country are what are strangling business. That's why capital isn't making its way to the marketplace. That's why people aren't hiring. That's why there's zero confidence in our future, because we're stuck in bureaucratic red tape. Just stand up and say, we're going to repeal Obamacare. Not that that's a fancy political slogan, but, hey, that's the reality of where we are. Businesses can't see around the corner. 2014 is a frightening time for most because of the costs that are projected. Second, let's talk about, Dodd-Frank and the fact that the capital ratio requirements for banks are making it impossible to get, our lifeblood to small businesses, which is capital. Let's talk about rolling back some EPA and manufacturing regulations and get on with a manufacturing revolution that this country is totally capable of launching.
That's a great idea. I want to play a short soundbite. It was on This Week on ABC. Laura Ingraham made an observation. I further checked it, and it seems to be true from what we have read from the LA Times. But listen to this very short soundbite.
We learned in the LA Times yesterday that the president no longer gets a daily briefing on the economy. I had to read it 2 or 3 times.
He doesn't get a daily briefing on the economy.
Unbelievable.
Is that alarming?
What else matters in this country? I hate to be so crass because families give their all to the military. I know that you all have, and our family has too. Our future isn't going to be in Afghanistan. Our future isn't going to be in Iraq. Our future is based on whether or not this nation is ready for the 21st century competitive challenges. And that's across the Pacific Ocean, and that's an economic challenge that we're up against for the 21st century. And we've got to get on the stick. And that means, beyond just reading the daily intel reports that come in from the field, getting the daily economic reports on where we're weak and what needs to be done. And it isn't government providing more stimulus and creating artificiality. It's government facilitating the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, which allows local governments to basically determine their own destiny. Washington stepping back and saying, how can we help? How can we get out of the way? How can we facilitate cross-border purchases of cheaper insurance policies, which longer term will be the fix for health care reform? Simple things that, really, I think are going to leave a lasting impact on this country. But that requires a president who's going to read the daily economic reports and respond to them in a way that speaks to making a more competitive marketplace.
We're talking to Governor Ambassador Jon Huntsman. John, are you disheartened by coming in second to last in the Iowa straw poll?
Hey, I thought it was pretty good we didn't come in dead last because I wasn't competing there. We haven't spent any time in Iowa. Iowa's a great state, wonderful people, but we are putting everything into New Hampshire and South Carolina and Florida. These are the states that will, I think, represent more than anything else a pathway to victory. So we've spent the last week in New Hampshire and the week before that between Florida and South Carolina. And for us, that even though it's not topical, it isn't in the news these days. It's all about Iowa, the drama coming out of Iowa. I like our position. I like where we are, and this will begin to play out in the months ahead. And people will see that New Hampshire is a good old-fashioned shoe leather state in the sense that you got to work it, you've got to earn it, you've got to shake hands with every citizen at least 11 times before they give you the benefit of the doubt. And that's exactly the way that we're approaching the marketplace.
How does Perry stepping into the race change the climate of this Republican race?
Rick is a friend, and he's a good man, and I salute Rick Perry. He has a good jobs record. That'll make 2 of us in the race who have good job records. I know he ranked very high in terms of what his state did in job creation. Our state, in terms of real numbers, was number 1 in terms of job creation. We're also named best managed state. We have the fastest growing state as a result with 2.4% unemployment. In order to beat President Obama, let's face the facts, because 2012 will be about which candidate can step up with a message that speaks to economic expansion and jobs, period. That's all that people care about. They want to get out of the hole they're in, and I believe they're going to be looking for a governor who has a track record that speaks to exactly that. Not one, for example, from Massachusetts who was number 47 in terms of job creation, but someone who was number 1. And Rick Perry would certainly be right up there in that category. We certainly would be up there in that category. But any entry into the race who can fundamentally broaden our discussion as a party in terms of how we can become more competitive and get this country going, expand our economy and create jobs and become better prepared for what will be a highly competitive 21st century. I know that. I've lived in Asia 4 times, beginning in the late 1970s, and I've spent the last 2 years, as mentioned, in China. Our trading partners are prepared for the 21st century and preparing for the 21st century, and we've got a lot of work ahead of us.
You raised your hand saying that you would not accept the 10-to-1 spending to tax increase deal. Could you explain so that people understand why it is unacceptable to accept even a 10-to-1 ratio of spending cuts to tax cuts? I'm sorry, spending cuts to tax increases.
Well, because people would typically find those tax increases coming by way of phasing out loopholes and deductions in the tax code. And let me tell you what I would want to do in phasing out those loopholes and deductions. Same thing I did as governor of the state of Utah, where we had historic tax cuts. We created a flat tax. Everyone said that would be impossible when we started the journey. We got it done. It took us 2 years. But we phased out those deductions, which a lot of people would call tax increases, all by themselves. We reinvested them back into the tax code by lowering the rate and broadening the base, thereby creating essentially a flat tax. So,
is that ever going to happen in this country? Will we ever get a modified tax, any reform in tax where we lower the rate and broaden the base? Will that happen?
Absolutely. That's exactly what needs to be done on the corporate side and on the individual tax side. I think it's the will of the people. It's a simple process. We need to streamline and simplify the tax code. As has been said since Steve Forbes ran, and he was more articulate than anybody else on the subject. 17,000 pages of our tax code. I think all we need to do is look to a governor who's actually done it. People said we couldn't do it, and it would never happen. We made it happen. It was the most competitive step our state took in terms of bringing the economy back to life. College graduates started hanging around. Entrepreneurs started investing in their state. And wouldn't you believe it, capital started making its way from the outside into our state because we all of a sudden became a safe haven for capital being parked in our marketplace because all of a sudden we had a more competitive dynamic that spoke to growth.
A federal appeals court ruled Friday that key provisions of the Obamacare plan are unconstitutional. What would you do about Obamacare?
Well, again, Roma, this isn't political bromide or just a slogan. I've consulted all the experts on this, at least people whose opinions I respect. You have to repeal Obamacare. There's no way that we can live in a world of a $1 trillion healthcare reform package over 10 years, competing head-on with many reform ideas happening within the individual states. Every state, like with the state of Utah, where we created a connector to match the uninsured with insurance policies in a free market fashion. It didn't have a mandate like they've done with Obamacare, like has happened in Massachusetts. It's a free market approach to connecting people with what? Real affordable insurance policies, which we've never had before. So I believe that Obamacare will be repealed, and then the question becomes, then what do you do? Then you let the states compete. You let the states create the best ideas as it relates to cost containment, things like harmonizing medical records, closing the gap on the uninsured based upon a free market connector with real affordable insurance policies. And then Washington should step back and say, how can we facilitate some of these best practices, the best ideas that are emerging from the states? And then I think you're going to get things like cross-border insurance purchasing opportunities, which we don't have today. For example, if somebody in Illinois wanted to buy one of our affordable policies in Utah, which basically are stripped-down, bare-bones, catastrophic policies that most college students can afford, they can't do that because it's a cross-border purchase. We need to make that possible. We need to free up the marketplace and allow the marketplace to take us toward those things that are affordable, that are portable, that are doable, and that will take us closer to a real market-based healthcare reform effort.
All right, Jon Huntsman, we'll talk again maybe when you're on your bus tour through Illinois.
Taxpayer funded.
I'm only going to be on a motorcycle tour, rest assured. Okay. Only 2 wheels for me.
All right. Okay, love to talk to you again. Thank you, Jon.
Thank you, Don Roma. All the best to you.
All right, yes. Jon Huntsman, maybe the next president. And Doug McQuillan has a Wall Street Journal report next, 7:51 WLS.
Don Wade and Roma, 890 AM WLS.